Hello there, and welcome to another update on the volcanic eruption taking place in Iceland. I'm Geology Professor Shawn Willsey. Today is Thursday, May 2nd, and we've had a little bit of changes in some of the activity levels there, so I thought I'd put together this update, walk you through some of the latest data and news, and see what we can learn together. Thanks for joining me. As always, thank you to Amanda Joe over in Iceland for sending me much of the information and the links that I use here. So thank you as always to her for her invaluable help. What you can see here is a live shot of the cute little spatter cone that's been erupting for the last few weeks. The primary vent and the most long-lasting vent for this eruption. The eruptive activity has dwindled to some degree over what it was a week or so ago. It's down to a outflow rate of less than 1 cubic meter per second, according to the Met Office. And maybe a week or two ago, it was as high as 3 to 4 cubic meters per second. So we are seeing a reduced flow rate coming out of this vent. We can also see here, let's maybe go back a little bit with a little bit better lighting, that the spatter cone's height has decreased. So there's been some collapses within the lava lake in the crater there. And so you can see this very more eroded, irregular rim around the spatter cone. So rather than positively constructing its rim by emitting spatter onto the rim and building it up, it's actually being undermined somewhat, and it started to collapse. So it's not nearly as high as it once was, several weeks ago. The other important thing that's developed as of today, and this view might work as well as any. Let's go back just a skosh to where the lighting's a little bit better. Is previously we had the spatter cone erupting from the summit, but there was also a conduit, a tube that was feeding from the base of the spatter cone and feeding into a lava channel, a perched lava channel that was flowing to the south. And in the last few days, that lava flow was actually moving through the subsurface in a tube system and breaking out in places and actually impinging on and running right up against to the defensive berm that surrounds Grindavik. And they've even had there was at least one little tongue of lava this past weekend that was even sort of very slowly and sluggishly moving its way over the top of the berm. But what's happened today is apparently there was some sort of change. Perhaps it was the conduit. There was a collapse here, and this conduit now seems to be at least partially clogged, if not fully clogged. And so we're not seeing as much of the lava output from the spatter cone feeding this perched lava channel to the south, but rather, as you can see here, we have lava presumably coming out from under the cone, or maybe it's taken a turn here from that same conduit, but nonetheless we have active incandescent lava flowing out to the west here. So you can see some of the glow here. Of course, with this very slow and sluggish output rate from the spatter cone, these lava flows aren't really progressing very far. They're staying very close to this area, and they're not really advancing appreciably in any direction. But if we look at where this might go moving forward, we can see that, in the past, again, we've had the eruption here. The spatter cone's more or less located here, and we've had lava flowing downslope, mostly on the surface, but also partly in the subsurface. And it got as far as about here, I would say, this segment of the defensive berm. And this is where we've seen a little finger, a little conduit of lava spilling over the brim there. But now that, at least for today, with the eruptive behavior changing a little bit and lava spilling out the west side of the crater, that's going to start to move into this area here. And I guess that's good news in that there's plenty of space here. There's plenty of real estate for that lava to flow. Now it's flowing quite sluggishly out of that spatter cone, so we're not likely to see it advance very far and really substantially fill this space unless there was some change to the eruptive behavior and things really ramped up to some degree. But nonetheless, probably a good thing, all things being equal, in that we're not still stressing the defensive systems that surround the town there. So that's good news. Let's go ahead and look at the Met Office update and see what they have. Let me go ahead and get this to the live view so you can see where we're at currently. It's getting close to dark there, but you can see the intermittent eruptions of lava in the summit crater there of the spatter cone, and then this glow here out along the base. And so, it has progressed a little bit. I think you can see that as we just kind of skip forward, that this lava is moving out a little bit to the west, but based on the overall flow rate, it's quite slow and it's quite sluggish. So let's go ahead and look at the Met Office update. So they did have an update today at about 12:15 local time. Make that a skosh bigger for you. And so we still have uplift, and the uplift that is being measured by the GPS sensors there is still recording inflation. So we still have magma being pumped from a deeper source into this shallow magma body that sits roughly underneath the Svartsengi power plant in Blue Lagoon area at a depth of about 4 to 5 kilometers. And so we're continuing to see evidence that magma supply is continuing. So the uplift goes on along with that. Measurements and model calculations indicate there's considerable uncertainty about the future. There's still an increased chance of a new magma run, and the power of the eruption on the Sunuks crater series will increase. So we're again in new territory with this eruption because we still have a vent open that's still emitting lava at the surface, that spatter cone, and simultaneously we also have inflation going on in the subsurface, and there's more magma moving into the system than is leaving the system. And so at some point, something's got to change. You can only fill so much space in the subsurface, and then that's going to demand that magma occupy some new space. Now, that could be space that it finds underground, and it fills an additional space underground as it pushes through fracture system or more porous and permeable zones between those layers of lava. Or it may mean that it finds a fracture system and an easy path and actually makes its way to the surface and causes another vent to open up while this eruption is going on. There's a risk that the lava will cover the defenses, those berms that they've built, east of Grindavik if the force of the eruption increases again. And so they're a little bit concerned at that south end of that flow, where I showed you that here on Google Earth. They're a little bit concerned because the lava is pretty much as high, if not overtopped those berms, and they're working on trying to raise the height of those. But if the lava were to flow out at a faster rate and follow that same pathway, that could possibly overtop these berms here. Now, the good news is that we're at this point in the defensive berm scenario. We're pretty far at the east edge of town where there's less infrastructure that would be impacted as opposed to over here in the more central part of the town. But still, there's still homes and roads and businesses at risk, and hence the concern. We'll get to the GPS data here in a little bit, but they go on to mention that the uplift has continued, the pressure continues to build. Down here, they have the seismic activities increased. I'll show you that here as well in a second. They have another lava flow map, this time comparing, they've got 3 different dates. So if you watch here, it goes from April 15th to the 25th to the 30th. And the main thing I suppose to focus on here is this area right around the defensive berm. So you can see it as it goes into those deeper shades of orange. That's that flow thickening. And so it's thickened over top the berm in one little small spot, and then it looks like it's maybe even built a little bit further to the south, although don't have confirmation of that. But you can see where the lava flow has thickened over that 2 weeks or so time period with this nice little graphic here provided by the Met Office. So the deeper shades of orange and red correspond to thicker amounts of lava. So mainly this ongoing eruption has thickened this field to the south. But today we have a new area that's being pushed out to the south here. And so we've got this area here that might be filled in if this eruption continues to pump lava out here to the west. Let's look at the earthquakes real quick. Again, the last 24 hours doesn't look very exciting, but I'll show you the week's data, and that might be a little bit more convincing. But nonetheless, a few more earthquakes on this plot than what we typically have seen while the eruption's been ongoing. A small little cluster just to the west or northwest of Grindavik. We've seen this pattern in the past. Remember that there's robins and faults that run through here, so these are very likely related to reactivation on some of these faults that are being stressed by this expanding and pressurizing magma body that lies underneath this region here. Of course, back over here, these may be more related to the eruption itself, or possibly, again, some stress release as the magma chamber is pushing on and impinging on and causing stress to some of these rocks in these weak zones and reactivating some of these faults. So you can see a little bit of an uptick in earthquake activity over the past 24 hours. If we look at, let's see what I've got here. I actually have a comparison here that I think is kind of telling. So this is a plot of earthquakes. Here's Grindavik. Here's that area to the west that had a few earthquakes. Okay, very similar to this here. And then up here, this is where our eruption site is. So there's our northeast, southwest trending dike zone, and we have an eruption occurring more or less, like about here-ish. There's Sellingerfeld, Hagafeld's down here, Stora Stogafeld. And so this is the earthquakes from April 18th to April 25th. So this is 2 weeks ago to last week, just to give you a sense of how much seismic activity was occurring and in what region. And I'm going to show you the exact same view now, but for the last week. So this is 2 weeks ago's data, April 18th to April 25th. Now let's look at April 25th to May 2nd. And you can see, especially up here, more earthquakes. And so there definitely has been an uptick in earthquake activity around the eruption site, again, presumably and possibly related to this expanding and pressurizing subsurface storage system starting to cause some changes in stress and pressure in the region. And so we'll have to see moving forward. A week from now, if this thing is still hasn't really changed significantly, we'll see if there's an increase in earthquake activity. Of course, we've seen in the past that the earthquakes can increase pretty quickly within just a few hours. So we'll look for anything that might resemble that kind of behavior moving forward. GPS data. So on my last update, which was I think on Monday, we were looking primarily at this little group of data here, where it looked like the inflation had maybe stagnated a little bit. We were looking at this little flat-lying section here, but you can see in the days since that last update, in the days since, we do have more of a stronger signal of uplift in the GPS data here. So the uplift seems to be continuing. Again, you can never take a little trend of 2, 3, even 4 points too seriously, but when you start to see 6, 8, 10, 12 multiple days worth of data, that does define a much better trend. So there is the Svartsengi plot still showing uplift. If we move maybe to the Blue Lagoon plot, we'll see the same sort of thing. Again, there was that lull that I was looking at during my last update, but that's since inflation has resumed, and so we can see the uplifting trend there. And maybe if we pick one more, this one's a good one here that shows that same sort of pattern. So pretty consistent pattern of uplift at a fairly slow rate, more or less the same rate we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks, but the uplift in inflation continues. And of course, the big question we'd all like to ask is, well, how long will that persist? When will this reach its threshold? How much uplift can be accommodated before the system is at its breaking point and that magma has to be moved somewhere else? Is it going to move into the subsurface? Is it going to move to the surface and cause a new vent to open up? And those are all questions that I don't think anyone can really address at this point. This was kind of fun here. This is the MBL news station. This is a comparison photo that was taken by Hordur Krislefsson, who does great videography and photography work. So here's a drone shot from 2023 looking down at Grindavik along the old Stunuks crater row. So these are these older, 800-year-old craters that existed when there was an eruption here, looking right down to the town. So that's what the landscape used to look like. And of course over here is what it looks like today. And so you can see just how drastically that landscape has changed. You can still pick out a few. This was taken from the exact same spot, so it nicely shows up comparison-wise. You can see this shield volcano here. On this side, this is Turpin, the mountain over here, just near the town. Here's Hagafelt, this hill down here. Then, of course, you can see the erupting spatter cone in this image on the right, which was taken from this year. So, literally, landscape changing right before our eyes within just a few short months here on the Reykjanes Peninsula. A few pieces of news, and then we'll wrap up our update here. I only left one or two of these in. If you go through all the news items in Iceland, the experts there present a very confusing picture, different opinions, different predictions about what might take place. And so, if you're a general public consumer of this news, it's quite confusing to know exactly what's going to take place. And I think that the bottom line is no one knows for sure. Everyone can look at the data and interpret it a little bit differently, but there's no clear indication in the data where there's a scientific consensus about what's going to happen moving forward. So this is just one here where they mainly talk to geophysicist Magnus Tumi Erdensen, and he talks about that the eruption has become very small. It's reduced considerably. That's similar to what we saw in 2023 with the Litli eruption. Another scenario, he says, is that it grows again. It gets stronger because magma is gathering under there. The other picture is that this will stop, but then it will probably be very short before an eruption occurs. So, could go either way. So we're just acknowledging, just quite a bit of uncertainty in the data. And this I thought was an interesting bit of news as well. And this talks about that the civil defense plans to submit proposals to the government regarding further constructions of fortifications. So they want to, the defensive berms have done a nice job since that first eruption in December. They were really put to the test in January, but they definitely proved their mettle in that eruption and in the March eruption that's still ongoing. But with this inflation of that perched lava channel, and some of the lava flows being right up to, if not higher than the berms, they see need to maybe raise those, do some re-engineering, and maybe come in with a phase 2 approach to these defensive structures for lava flows. And that's what this is all about. So we have had additional defenses designed inside the park where the lava has arrived, and we're now in the process of looking at how it can be useful. We need to run lava simulation models and everything needed so we can submit a proposal. But they do talk about that it can go quite quickly, that the process is quite fast in terms of getting it approved at the government level and then actually triggering the actual work there. And so even though the eruption could wind down, the eruption could ramp up, there's still a very clear interest and priority to protect the town, that harbor, as best they can with whatever infrastructure they can put in place. So that is, I believe, the summary I have for today. We'll see what happens with this new little flow field that's kind of progressing very slowly to the west. Not too worried about how far that might get given the current state and flow and output of this eruption. But this could change quickly. At some point, that magma in the subsurface is going to need to go somewhere. Is it going to go into some new space underground? Is it going to come up through this existing vent? Or is it going to open a new vent? Those are the three primary scenarios that we're kind of looking at. And of course, if it did open up a new vent in the system, where exactly would that eruption, where would that be? Where would that be in the system? Would it be further to the north, like we saw with the December eruption, or in the February eruption? Would it be pretty much close to this existing March 16th eruption, or would it be somewhere else along this trend? And that is the reason so many of us are interested in tuning into this. It's geology in action. It's breaking news, if you will. And I think it's partly the uncertainty. If we knew exactly what was going to happen, it might not be that exciting to see it play out. But I think we tune into this much like we tune into a sporting event because we don't know the outcome. We don't know what's going to happen. And we're hoping for some drama and some intrigue and some excitement along the way. And so I think this this ongoing eruption is just like that. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you again for joining me. Hope you're well. Thank you for all your support of this channel. It allows me to help out Amanda Joe. It allows me to help out our moderators on our live stream. And it also allows me to get to some of the sites I get to put together some of these geology videos. So with that, I will thank you for your loyal viewership. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you on another update or another video. Take care and thanks.